In many parts of the world, the United States is seen as a cause of conflicts. Whether this is true or not, U.S. foreign policies have contributed to global conflicts as often as they have mitigated them. But Donald Trump was the first U.S. president since Jimmy Carter who did not enter U.S. troops into new foreign conflicts. Can Trump pull the world back from the brink of World War III? What are the market implications of world peace? What twists and turns should we expect? And how might it all go wrong? How should you invest your money right now? Donald Trump campaigned on the promise to end the Ukraine war and the conflicts in the Middle East. On U.S.-China relations, Trump called Xi Jinping a friend and said that China and the U.S. could together solve all the problems in the world. World peace is a tall order, given how much bad blood there is between the unipolar and the multipolar worlds right now. But Donald Trump has two advantages over his predecessors. He does not carry any ideological baggage, and he has no problem getting his hands dirty. These are evidenced by the fact that he was the first U.S. president to ever travel to North Korea while in office. If Trump can deliver world peace, the market implications will be profound. Potential world peace in 2025 will be bullish for industrial commodities and bearish for gold. It will be bullish for emerging market currencies and bearish for the US dollar. It will be bullish for travel stocks and bearish for defense stocks. It will see nominal bonds outperform inflation index bonds. Whether we like it or not, if we want to get the market right in 2025, we have to get U.S. foreign policy right. Whether Trump's plan for world peace will succeed or not, it is very clear that it won't be a walk in the park. What this means for investors is that market volatility will likely stay high, and we cannot rule out that things might get worse before they get better. In an interview with Reuters this week, two Trump advisors conceded that the Ukraine war would take months or even longer to resolve. After promising to end the Ukraine war in just 24 hours, Trump gave a new timeline of 6 months last week. This seeming pessimism is likely an indication that any unofficial discussion between the Trump team and the Russians over the past month has not gone as well as hoped. This is not too surprising, given that the momentum in the battlefield is clearly behind the Russians right now. Russian troops have most of Torsk and Chasiv Yar under control, and they're now within striking distance of Pokrovsk, Kupiansk, and Liman. The situation looks increasingly desperate for Ukraine. Not only NATO's long-range missiles deployed in Ukraine are faring poorly against Russian air defense, Ukraine is flatly running out of men, as acknowledged this week by Marco Rubio, Trump's nomination for Secretary of State. What this all amounts to is that there is no urgency for Putin to stop the war right away. The war of attrition is going in his favor, and that Russia's bargaining position will only strengthen from here. Indeed, the war is going so well for Moscow that the Kremlin has reportedly pushed back on Trump's proposal to establish a buffer zone between Russia and Ukraine that will be patrolled by French and British troops. Moscow likely sees this proposed arrangement as being no different in practice than Ukraine becoming a NATO member. We can't blame Putin for being cautious. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel admitted in 2022 that the 2014 Minsk Agreement was intended only to buy Ukraine time to build up its armed forces. Putin will not make the same mistake in any future peace negotiation. He will need more than empty assurances that Russia's security concerns are satisfied. I suspect this means the war will be decided in the battlefield, as opposed to by diplomacy. In this respect, the best scenario for the market is if by the beginning of the summer, Russian troops have overcome what is left of Ukrainian defense in the parts of the Donetsk region not yet under Russian control, and decide to stop. Once Russia has established a defensible border for the annexed regions, Putin will demand a neutral Ukraine that won't have the possibility to rearm in the future. The only open question is whether Trump will let the war play out. Or would he be pressured by the rest of NATO to try to delay the inevitable? My guess is the former. It makes no sense to throw good money after bad. The best Trump can do is to cut America's losses in this war. The fact that Trump said last week that he could understand why Russia does not want NATO on his doorstep makes me optimistic. But not optimistic enough to start buying European assets already. I will wait until a face-to-face meeting between Trump and Putin. Maybe Trump will suggest meeting in Greenland. In a way, it is easier for Trump to improve US relations with China than with Russia. At least no blood has yet been spilled. The bar is low, and both sides have an incentive for returning to the negotiation table. The fact that Trump does not see the world through the lens of democracy versus authoritarianism should make the conversation easier. During his confirmation hearing, Rubio, a well-known China hawk, called China a dangerous adversary, but he did not frame the rivalry as one between two ideologies. I've talked about what a potential deal between the US and China could look like in a previous video. I think the most likely path is a series of small deals as opposed to one comprehensive one. TikTok presents an opportunity for such a deal. TikTok is owned by ByteDance, that is 60% owned by BlackRock, the Carlyle Group, and General Atlantic. In other words, it already has a majority American ownership. If TikTok is banned in the US, the biggest losers will be its American shareholders and millions of its users in the US. Reports this week that China is considering a deal that involves selling TikTok to Elon Musk make sense. Elon Musk already has a lot of investments in China. He would be the biggest loser if US-China relations were to break down completely. Selling TikTok to him is the most logical solution to the problem. TikTok presents an opportunity for Trump to show that making deals with China is better than making an enemy out of China. Mike Waltz, Trump's incoming national security advisor, said this week that Trump is ready to issue an executive order to buy time for TikTok until a solution is found. I see TikTok as a litmus test for the future of US-China relations. To the extent that a successful resolution could provide a blueprint for other seemingly intractable problems, it could provide support to the troubled Chinese stock market. Wall Street's number one concern right now is Trump's tariff threats. How credible are these threats? Let's look at it on a case-by-case basis. Nearly 30% of US imports come from Mexico and Canada. The biggest casualty of a blanket tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada will be US companies that have huge investments in supply chains in both countries. The US is by far the biggest foreign investor in both countries, accounting for about 50% of their direct foreign investments. Moreover, as I've argued repeatedly in previous videos, Trump needs Mexico to implement his deportation policies. The fact that Mexico said earlier this month that it is willing to consider taking in non-Mexican deportees from the US shows that Mexico understands where its leverage lies in its negotiation with Trump. I see very low chance of any US tariffs on Mexico in 2025. And I see very low chance of a blanket US tariff on Canadian imports. Any tariff against Canada will be targeted. What about Europe? About 23% of US imports are from Europe. The problem for Trump is that Europe will certainly retaliate right away against any new US tariffs. During Trump 1.0, tariffs on European steel and aluminum were met with tariffs on American products such as bourbon, motorcycles, and oranges. Trump will need all the support he can get from Europe to bring an end to the Ukraine war. Tariffs could also backfire by pushing Europe and China closer. I see some chance of a targeted tariff on Europe in 2025 but I see little chance of a blanket tariff on Europe in the first half of 2025. The chance of a blanket tariff in the second half is higher. A lot will be riding on whether Elon Musk will be able to find enough cuts in federal spending to enable Trump to extend his 2017 tax cuts without having to resort to blanket tariffs. About 40% of US imports come from Asia, with China accounting about a third of it, and US allies like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan accounting for another third. It is difficult to see Trump hitting Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan with new blanket tariffs without doing the same against Europe. This leaves China. The risk of new US blanket tariffs on China is higher than for other countries, but I don't think the odds are more than 30%. This is because today China only accounts for 13% of total US imports. And even a large blanket tariff would not raise nearly enough revenue to help pay for Trump's tax cuts. Trump might decide that the US is better off by getting China to buy more US goods and to make more stuff in the US. Obviously, a lot is riding on what happens to TikTok, but I'm not too worried about a blanket tariff on China in the first 100 days of Trump's new presidency. That said, I'm not rushing to buy the RMB. I would consider buying Chinese stocks if we do get a TikTok deal. So hold on to the edge of your seats. It's going to be a dangerous ride.